like to add foils to your card making designs? Today I'm using Fab Foils from Wow Embossing Powders along with a variety of different double-sided adhesive materials to create some beautiful, stunning, modern, clean and simple cards. These are easy to change up to any occasion and the colour schemes are endless. It's Verity here from the design team, so let's get started with today's 3 cards. So the first card, I'm using the teal Fab Foil colour. This is a lovely blue-green foil that's gorgeous when you use it. To start off with, the first double-sided adhesive I'm going to use is Stick It. This is very thin sheets of A4 double-sided adhesive material. And what I've done is I'm using my guillotine to trim varying widths of the double-sided Stick It sheets. I'm cutting it down lengthwise because going horizontally you will get some indentations from where the release paper can peel up from. Now you do have to be careful when you're adhering this down. If you do get your finger attached to the sticky side and you start to peel it off your finger, you may take some of the adhesive away when you're trying to put it down, and that means there'll be a little void area when you come to cover it with foil. So I'm taking off the back of the release paper and then I'm positioning it over my card and lining it up straight with my grid mat, and I'm doing this with all different widths, so some really thin pieces of Stick It adhesive and some more thick pieces. Now you can use double-sided tape, which I'm going to show you later on, but for the really thin intricate pieces and in intricate lines, the double-sided Stick It is perfect for this. After I've peeled off the release paper, I'm just placing the teal foil down onto my card with the colour side up, and then I'm pushing it down and burnishing it with my finger. Now with the Stick It adhesive, as I say, it is a very thin adhesive, so you will get more of a rustic look with using this type of adhesive. You may not get complete perfect foiling, but this gives, when you look at it later, a bit more of a distressed look, and I really love the effect from this background. With the colour of the blue and the white, it makes me feel like this card is representing a bit of a beach hut. Now you can, if you've got a few areas where some adhesive is still exposed, you can take the foil sheet and just position it back over and burnish it down, and if there's any adhesive there, it's gonna stick to that, and when you lift the foil sheet off, the foil will remain. To finish this card off, I'm using the Big Hello Sugar Script die from Birch Press Design. Die cut the hello 3 times from white cardstock and layered this up, and I've die cut the shadow from vellum, so you will get some of that foil appearing through that vellum shadow that's more muted down. To finish this card off, I'm just adding a heat emboss sentiment using the word miss you, and I've heat embossed this in the opaque, bright white opaque powder from Wow, and I've foam mounted that onto the card, and I've adhered my hello directly onto the panel, and I've foam mounted the whole panel onto a white card base. Just to finish this card off, I'm adding a few white Nouveau drops just as some embellishments and to add a little bit more interest to the background. As I say, the Stick It adhesive creates more of a rustic foiling, more of a distressed look. For my second card of using double-sided adhesive, I'm first of all taking a piece of the Wow Embossing Powder white cardstock. I'm using some blending makeup brushes and some Catherine Pooler Mint to Be ink, and I'm just blending the ink onto the background at a bit of an angle. I plan to adhere my foil at an angle, so I want the colour to peek through the foil at that same angle. This is just to give a little bit of a soft background to beneath the foil, and I've just sped it up for you. And it takes a while because these brushes can apply the ink so softly. It just takes a little bit of time to add and build that ink up. To add a bit more depth, I'm using a slightly darker colour within the middle, and I'm using Catherine Pooler's Skylight ink, and I'm just going back and forth adding the colour, going between the 2 colours just to blend them and to soften the edges up. So for the actual adhesive, I'm just using some 1/2 inch double-sided tape that you use to adhere your card panels down to your card or matte layers, and I'm just positioning this across the card panel at a similar angle to that ink blending and just trimming off the edges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a variety of two different widths. I've got a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch double-sided tape, and I'm just positioning these at varying lengths, varying distances across the card panel, just to give a bit more intrigue and interest. So I'm not doing full strips across all the way, and it will allow the ink blending just to pop through. When I've adhered all the tape that I want to over the panel, I can then peel off the release paper, exposing the adhesive. And then I'm using the Spearmint Fab Foil. This is a lovely green foil that's very reminiscent of the green used with mints. And again, I'm just positioning the foil with the colour side facing up over the adhesive, and I'm able to cover all of it in one go. And then I'm just pressing the foil down into the adhesive, smoothing it out, using my fingers to really burnish the foil onto the adhesive. Now don't worry if you start to peel up in areas, you can put it back down, but it's really important that you really do burnish it down quite well. If there's areas that aren't picking up, you can go back down and burnish it in. The double-sided tape will not have areas that may have been missed, like the very thin stickered adhesive sheets would. What's great about the foil as well, after I removed the foil from the card, I felt that like the colour in the background wasn't strong enough and I wanted to add more. And like Emboss Resist, the foil will resist some of the ink. And you can go back and forth adding more of the colour onto the background, and then just use a cloth, a dry paper towel, just to smooth away any excess ink. So for this card, to finish it off, I used the Scripty Happy from Lawn Fawn, and I die cut this 3 times, just layering it up. And then I'm heat embossing a small birthday sentiment onto black cardstock, again using the bold opaque bright white embossing powder from Wow, and I use my clear ultra slow drying embossing pad just to stamp that before I embossed it. Then I heat set it using my Wow Embossing dual speed heat gun. To finish this card off, I was unsure as to what colour drop I was going to add to the card, and I just used my little cheat sheet of acetate where I've got some dried coloured drops on there, and I can just position it over my card to figure out which colour goes really well with the scheme of the card. I wanted a card to pop more from the green, but also to complement it quite well. So I used the Liquid Mercury Nouveau drop just to add a few different drops around the sentiment and up the card. Sometimes I find my Nouveau drops may have a little bit of a point to them, or not as flat as I want them to be and quite 3D. One way I try to reduce this amount of dimension so it's not going to be squashed too much in the mail is I just tap the card off on my craft mat just to help flatten them down a bit more. So for the last card, I'm using some very thin foam adhesive strips from Darice. Now before I start adding the foil to those, I need to create my background, so I'm using my blending brushes again and a couple of colours from Catherine Pooler. I'm using Bellini and Sheer Butter, so this is creating a lovely soft yellowy orange background where I'm going to create a foil frame that's 3D and adhere my sentiment over the top of that. And the sentiment I'm using is the Thanks Sugar Script die by Birch Press. And what I'm doing is positioning the die cut over my ink blended area to work out how wide I want my foil frame to be. And I'm just marking it with a pen to roughly figure out how long I want it to be. What I did was detach 4 foam strips off of the remainder and then use my guillotine to trim those strips at that little mark I made. Trimming my card down by 1/8 of an inch so it's got a nice border when it's adhered to the card panel. To adhere my frame, I am peeling off the release paper on the back of the foam strip, and then I'm using my T-ruler to help line it up and get it straight. I've got the remainder of the foam tapes just underneath the ruler to one side so I can work out where I want the edge of the frame to stop. And then I add the remainder of the foam strips around, creating a square. To add the foil, I remove the release paper and position the foil colour side up. So the fab foil I'm using here is the rose gold fab foil. It is my favourite. I love rose gold, and I think this pairs so beautifully with the orange and the yellow tone of the ink blending. Now don't worry if you've got a bit of an area where you haven't completely foiled the whole strip, but you've got a little bit of foil off, as you can see in that corner. When you do it later and cover it, it will still look seamless. You won't have a gap or anything like that. And I'm just going around just burnishing it on, and you get such an amazing coverage of foil using these little strips. And what I love about it is it's a 3D foil frame, and it was so easy to make, and it just lifts the sentiment from that ink blended background, and it creates a beautifully clean and simple card. To finish it off, I'm just using some Nouveau Jewel Drops. This is the Strawberry Coulis colour, and I thought this paired really well with the oranges and the yellows, as well as that rose gold colour of the foil. So I hope I've shown you 3 different ways of using adhesive with fab foils to create some really modern and interesting yet clean and simple cards, suitable for any sort of occasions. If you've enjoyed the video, please think about subscribing to the Wow Embossing Powder channel. We'd love it if you could hit that bell icon so you'll be notified when our next video is up. I'd also love it if you could come over and check out my channel, Pretty Little Button. I've also included a link here and in the description below. If you enjoyed this project, why not check out this other video where I show 3 ways to add shine to your cards with Wow. Until next time, happy crafting!